Hi, this is Joelle, and I am the Viberarian. I am here to elevate, enlighten, and empower. So today I'm coming on for part 2 of a reading that I'm delivering using the resources that are part of my Viberary, or High Vibrational Resource Collection. This includes oracle cards, decks, books, literature, things that I have found that I know are supporting the spiritual messages that are able to be delivered through me. So we're kind of having an ongoing experience with the crystal rhodochrosite, and I'll link to the previous videos where we've had this conversation. I think it's quite beautiful because what happens is once I activate with the information, then I will get messages from all over that repeat to me, no, please go in and gather and receive what information is available so that it can be delivered. So I had a conversation with a dear sister named Althea, who's of the Soul Whisperer YouTube channel, and we also connected through a video by Nikki on Divine Love Crystal Grid, who kind of started this kind of connective dot for rhodochrosite because the card came up in a reading that she did. And the crystals Hemimorphite and Rhodochrosite were both part of this kind of information package that came through. And I've done a reading on Hemimorphite, a partial reading on Rhodochrosite. And in the middle of this, a dear friend of mine named Judy messaged me, and she was like, you would not believe I actually have a Hemimorphite and Rhodochrosite in my personal possession. And Judy is a beautiful sister friend, and I'm going to actually connect with her at a future video because there's additional guidance that will come through the pathway of information through her as well. So it is also connected to rhodochrosite. Now, I did not know anything about this crystal prior to beginning to intake the information that's here, and it's been quite an interesting journey so far, yesterday, today, and even last week. So the resource that I've used yesterday or earlier was the Liquid Crystal Oracle by Justin Assar. Beautiful resource. And now for this part, I'm going to be reading from the Crystal Masters 333 by Alana Fairchild, Initiation of the Divine Power with the Divine Power of Heaven and Earth. I love this book series. I have the Crystal Angels 444, Crystal Goddesses 888, and if she publishes any others, I will definitely be adding them to my collection. So the Ascended Masters are the wise beings who lived at different times in our planet, and they embody the messages of unconditional love through their own particular journey. And they've come to be recognized as such because many of them are still guiding our energies as we are going through this expansion. And I would definitely invite you to go into the rabbit hole and just Google Ascended Masters and begin to engage with that energy. So in her book, she covers the crystals, their energies, and she also then has channeled a mandala for each of them. So this is the one for rhodochrosite. I know I'm not doing the best job here. I'm still trying to get where my camera and everything are, but I do have a picture of it available through another website. So let me pull this up. This was the card that was from the deck that we first looked at in the earlier reading from the Atlantis Oracle. And here we go, is the picture, a scan of the picture I found out on the internet. It's a little bit different in terms of the color of pink is a little more vibrant in this picture, but it's still all in the family. So this relates to Ascended Master Lady Nada, sensitivity, rhodochrosite for emotional healing and initiation of the child within. So I'm going to basically just read through this information, and if this is the kind of experience that you want to have, please continue to join me. And if not, definitely check out this resource on your own and add it to your collection, because I've done a lot of work with this, the energies in here. It's been very helpful to let me know what higher energies have come to assist me at different points in my journey. So this is the initiation of the child within. It starts with a short image guidance and then the narrative. And every time I'm saying this is written in the voice of Alana Fairchild. This is very much her journey and experience that she shares messages and anecdotes and metaphors as she is bringing through this teaching. So, initiation of the child within. Caressing waves of pink and white light move towards you now. The heart relaxes, enchanted by the gentleness. Light, pink and white, creates patterns, bands, and swirls of healing energy. Peace, kindness, safety. Old pain releases, transformed into an opportunity for growth. There is healing now. The child within is finally granted peace. Okay. Matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and pull that up because it's a lot more interesting to look at than me reading. So, the child within lives in each one of us, even if we are now in adult bodies. The child within is not a physical child as such, but an energetic part of us, which is important to our spiritual success and material well-being. It is this part of us that feels and experiences the magic in life. It is this part of us that is open to ideas and inspiration, to learning, and is very naturally very curious and adventurous. It is also often the part of us that was taught to fear, to hold back, and dampen down our individuality, boldness, and uniqueness. Prior to societal conditioning, some of which is helpful and plenty of which is not, our child nature is naturally fearless and growth-oriented. I vividly remember learning to fear as a child, suffering high levels of near constant anxiety in a household with much emotional intensity and minimal emotional boundaries. My anxiety was my constant companion for over 2 decades of my life, mostly as a result of being emotionally overloaded with insufficient constructive outlet for my feelings and a need to learn how to build emotional boundaries. It was so familiar to me that I didn't realize I was carrying it until one day, after learning in therapy about how to express my emotions, I began to feel some intermittent relief. I started to learn the difference between natural, healthy fear as a self-protective mechanism, for example, to stop one from walking into an oncoming truck, and an unhealthy fear that would block me from living a full life. Several years after this, anxiety was no longer my constant companion, and my child within began to reveal herself as being so much more than a fearful creature. For a long time, however, I believed that I needed to nurture, protect, comfort, and soothe the child within, and that her role was to be held by this inner nurturing state, and that was about it. Then one day, I heard a casual remark that changed my view of the child within, hinting at her power rather than her need for protection. The comment was something along the lines of trusting the child within to lead me. I started to remember myself before I really learned to fear, in those precious moments of raw being before I encountered the full forces of societal conditioning that came with schooling. I had memories of the child within me as being curious, a wild gypsy soul with a passionate love for nature and a gentle, sensitive heart drenched in compassion. She hated to see suffering, and she had a fierce sense of natural justice and morality. She didn't judge, but she knew when someone was coming from fear rather than love. She had a rich inner world and loved to play, to feel free, to let her imagination soar, and to feel the divine alive in the trees and the wind that rustled their leaves. She could feel eternity speaking to her through the endless waves of the ocean and the soft sunlight filtering through the foliage of her beloved trees. She would lie on the ground and be transfixed by the endlessness of the sky and the mystery of the moon. She was bold and open and introspective and sensitive. She found it easy to accurately read people as soon as she met them. Though she was shocked and saddened by the darkness in people's actions at times, she maintained her curiosity and openness to others. I realized that this child within offered me so much more than a chance to develop self-parenting techniques to heal her fear. She was my original self in human expression. I loved her and I wanted not only to heal her past pain, but to honor her in the present moment too. Whilst I realized that yes, I needed to care for her and offer her the protection of sensible boundaries and support in following her dreams, I could also trust her passion for life and let her wild playfulness and curiosity about people and places guide me into rich experiences of life. I needed her as much as she needed me. In fact, I was her and she was me. Suddenly, inner child work wasn't about healing the past, it was about being able to really be myself and live fully in the present. To gain access to our uniqueness and passion for adventure, and to shed our conditioning of fear and doubt, almost always requires healing of the child within. Even if we have done work on this already, I have personally found that there can be deeper layers to be released so that we can really be as a child to life, open, receptive, curious, and eager to explore the vast possibilities for spiritual growth available to those of us living within this planetary energy field. Although healing the child within can be emotionally intense and challenging, as we learn to stay present in our emotions without getting completely caught up and swept away by them, we will also gain psychological strength and emotional maturity that are essential if we want to lead a genuinely fulfilling life. It is not only learning how to respond as a loving and wise parent to the child within that improves our quality of life. Being able to healthily express the child within makes life much more fun for us too. We will feel more in touch with our creativity, feel inspired and able to play, have fun, and feel real joy without needing a particular reason to do so. If we are finding that we are lacking in fun or play, or that our emotional lives seem to lack stability and we don't feel very safe and secure within ourselves, we can be sure that the child within needs some healing. It has been my experience of inner child healing and in working with Lady Nada and Rhodochrosite that much of the healing of the child within has to do with letting go of the false selves that we had to take on to cope with the world and earn love and approval. For healing of the child within to happen so that our approach to life can dramatically change, we have to become present to what we felt as children, even if we don't understand it logically. Being present means accepting whatever arises and responding with compassion rather than judgment, especially when we feel something without understanding why or having a story to explain or justify our feelings. We are learning in this process of being present without judgment to become capable of hearing our own stories, truly receiving our experiences, and listening to ourselves. Our story might be a trauma that left an impact, or it might be a number of challenging feelings that don't seem to belong to any incident in particular, and our challenge is to be present to the absence of a clear reason behind our feelings without dismissing our feelings. It is only with genuine compassionate presence that we are able to truly feel and consequently release our feelings and any stories attached to them. As this happens, we can finally move on to create and attract new experiences for ourselves. This feels much This feels more alive and empowered than getting caught up in the history seeming to repeat itself, such as when we see our father in our employer or our mother in our lover, for example, or hearing our parents' words coming out of our mouths when trying to parent our own children, despite our best efforts to do things more consciously. To embark upon healing the child within takes a lot of courage. I have seen people who are quite fearless in some areas of their lives buckle at the thought of doing inner child healing. When a childhood wound is hidden deeply in the unconscious, and the only evidence of its existence is a persistent, painful pattern in one's life experience, or a persistent disease in the body, it can be hard to accept that there is a problem within us rather than something external to us or unrelated to the past. Subconscious fear of meeting what is within us that is in so much pain can give rise to avoidance tactics and excuses that sound so convincing. We believe in them instead of the truth hiding underneath our feelings. So inner work might be rejected as being self-indulgent or victim-oriented or just plain silly, for example. One common excuse is that the past is the past and our parents did the best they could, and what's the point of going back and reliving something that's over? The point is, however, that healing the child within is not about blaming your parents for being human, but about living what is not over and still haunting your current life experience. Eventually, the emotional experiences of the past are not allowed to come out of your body as emotional energy that is recognized, held, and accepted, and consequently released. Eventually, the emotional experiences of the past that are not allowed to come out of your body as emotional energy that is recognized, held, and accepted, and consequently released will have nowhere else to go but back into the body, where it will be concretized. Eventually, this concretized energy will show up as a somatic symptoms, such as panic attacks, rashes, sleep disturbance, and chronic illnesses. If left long enough, the unconscious wounding has no choice but to eventually express itself as dis-ease. Then energy has to be spent on healing the disease, which may be resistant to healing because it is like trying to heal a wound without getting to the real cause of the wound, such as the splinter that is causing an abscess. The emotional healing, often through tears or other emotional release, is the cleansing that then allows the wound to heal. Disease is not something to be ashamed of, as it can be a powerful catalyst for spiritual growth. Sometimes disease is a karmic requirement for a lifetime for reasons that we do not understand intellectually. And no matter how much inner work that we do, we may experience it anyway because it will help our soul grow in some way that could not be achieved by other experiences. However, there are also times when disease could have been avoided by more conscious inner work. Sometimes we just won't know if disease could have been prevented or not, and judging and shaming ourselves or another isn't very constructive. It will always be helpful, however, to work with disease from an emotional perspective to help cleanse the underlying wound and encourage healing. Healing may result in eradicating the disease, or it may manifest at an emotional level alone. Either way, once the emotional work is completed, our experience of life will improve dramatically, and limits to our next stage of spiritual growth fall away. We will be able to step into the next level of divine empowerment and express that empowerment in our lives. Our subjective experience of our family of origin may be completely different to that of our siblings and parents. Getting clear about our own experience and discovering the truth of our feelings about our childhood experiences is a powerful step towards healing. Giving that subjective experience and associated feelings some expression, preferably through journaling and writing letters that you do not send, but use for your own therapeutic emotional expression, is an effective way to connect with and heal the child within. It is a way to get to the truth of our experiences and let them go. It is a way to be heard by our own hearts and to feel empowered that we survived our pain and can move on. It will hurt, but it is also the way to end the repeated suffering. To do this, we have to be brave and to trust ourselves. It is common for people who have been conditioned heavily by various family members or members of their community groups to believe that their mother is a saint, or their father is a devil, or that they were the bad child and their sister the good child, and so on, to have a really hard time in finding their own truths. This they may feel as they begin to challenge the previously accepted assumptions about their family life that they are making things up, lying, or going a bit crazy. This is a normal part of the process of waking up and finding one's own truth. Maybe to that child, the mother was not a saint, but passive aggressive, controlling, and emotionally punitive, in some ways loving and yet also withdrawn, unavailable, and cold. This could be very confusing to a child. Maybe to that child, the father was not a devil, but a lost child himself that couldn't offer the child any emotional protection from the cold rage of the mother. Maybe that child felt like they were very bad and a great disappointment to the family, and subconsciously acted that out through the various types of rebellion, or even trying to be the hero and achieve endlessly instead, but underneath it all felt very lonely, rejected, weird, and afraid. Being willing to experience our genuine feelings, even when they conflict with what other people seem to think the truth was, is so important. You don't have to convince anyone of anything, nor do you have to convince yourself of anything. The only mystery you are trying to solve here is the mystery of your own feelings. If you felt something, there was a reason for it, regardless of whether that reason is utterly invisible to you and everyone else. It doesn't matter if you can see or know the reason or not. What is important is to listen to your feelings and give them expression, preferably in a journal or letters that you do not send, or in the healing process in this chapter. I rarely, if ever, advocate that you take this healing back into your family of origin by trying to get your family to understand your reality, unless you have a very strong emotional support system outside of the family and perhaps somewhere also within the family. And you feel that even if you are shot down in the flames of rejection and criticism for what you were speaking of, you would still feel better for voicing it to various family members anyway. The reason I mention this is that whether or not there is any objective truth to the reality you experienced as a child is unimportant. For example, your siblings might have experienced their childhood reality very differently to yours, even if you were raised in the same family with the same parents. This in no way should make you question your own experience. What is important to your own healing process is to discover, express, and accept how you felt at the time. Whether or not you would have actually lost your parents' love if you did something that you wanted to do, but stopped yourself from doing out of fear of abandonment, is not important. It is the fear that you felt about possibly losing that love that is significant to the choices you made, and that is the reality you experienced. Perhaps that is the reality that gave rise to various emotions that even now may be holding you back from pursuing your dreams out of fear of losing love and being abandoned by your husband, for example. You don't need the approval, validation, or agreement of anyone to justify your feeling experiences from childhood. They just were what they were. What is important in this work is that you create an inviting, accepting space to listen to the child within and do not criticize or reject what is expressed, even if it is different to what another says happened, or if you are chided not to think or feel a certain way because it makes you seem ungrateful, for example. Just think of a child terrified by a nightmare. Telling her that it isn't real and dismissing her fear or feeling rejected by her because she doesn't trust you to protect her teaches her that she won't really be really heard and that she ought to try and repress her fear. This is likely to create a greater underlying anxiety as one passes through life as an adult. a sort of baseline terror that surges up from time to time without the poor adult really understand what it is they are fearing. A more constructive option is for the adult to say to that terrorized child something along the lines, I am here for you. I can see and feel that you are very frightened now. I know that probably doesn't feel very good at all. I am sorry that you are suffering, but I am here with you. I am listening to you and I am with you. It's okay to feel afraid. I am here to protect you, but it's okay to feel what you are feeling too, and it will pass eventually. With that attitude and not coming from fear of your child's fear, allowing the child to be with their fear and find their own way through it with you right there with them, creates some exceptionally beneficial emotional coping mechanisms that will serve that child throughout life. That child learns that fear is a feeling and it can be received, it can be handled, and it can be all right even to feel afraid sometimes. She is no longer a little girl left to fend with an overwhelming terror that is dismissed as nonsense while it feels very real to her. She doesn't have to feel that fear is terrifying to her because she was not taught to contain it and respond to it effectively. Instead, she can be a sensitive child who learns that even big feelings are nothing to be frightened of and can be held within a loving and safe container as they are felt and then eventually released naturally. She learns not to fear her fear, and deep within, she learns to feel secure within herself. This is the sort of difference we want to give to ourselves through healing the child within. What we are healing is actually the relationship between ourselves and the here and now, the adult within us, which may need to learn some new parenting skills, and the child within that wasn't able to be parented in the way she needed as a child. That may have had nothing to do with whether or not she was loved, by the way. She perhaps just had needs that the parents had not been equipped to deal with. Inadequate parenting can come from a lack of love, or more often it just comes from a lack of skill. Anyone who thinks parenting is easy quite possibly is not doing a great job at it. Fortunately, we can learn new skills about how to parent our child within as adults and transform a once frightening and lonely inner landscape into something that is warm, nourishing, and secure. As your child within becomes aware that she can trust you to be there for her without judging, invalidating, or hiding from her emotions, then that child within will feel increasingly safe in fully expressing and realizing those emotions. The weight you'll release energetically and perhaps even physically, and the habits that will lose their grip on you may astound you. Spending time fostering your relationship with your inner child opens you to greater authenticity and a sense of being yourself, which can feel really good, especially if you have tried to be someone else for a long time. It also gives your adult self permission to have fun, be curious and connected with life, live in the moment, feel comfortable in your body, and be more playful and creative. These qualities feel very enriching and add a sense of joy and awe to our lives. Your adult self will feel more empowered to make responsible, creative, and psychologically safe decisions in your life because it is less hampered by unconscious distrust and fear, anger, guilt, shame, and such, which would have made clear decision making more challenging. From a place of connection to a healthier child within, those decisions will include choices that are more heartfelt and personally rewarding too. You'll just want to live a life that supports your well-being in all ways, and you'll be more capable of doing so. You might relate to some of this discussion, feeling that it is relevant to issues in your life now, in which case the healing process at the end of this chapter will be especially pertinent for you. If that's the case, then you are obviously at a time of growing personal power where you are ready to tackle a past wound. Or perhaps you have moved through these issues to some extent already, and this chapter may be an encouraging reminder of how far you have come on your personal healing journey. Okay, so I'm heading into the home stretch with this chapter. So, Lady Nada, sensitivity. Lady Nada is often sensed as a cloud of soft pink and golden light. She is a very special guide. She embodies the strength of gentleness, which makes her a perfect companion for any work with children, including the child within. She is powerful enough to be gentle, and this makes her non-confronting for those who have experienced abuse and become either broken or overly aggressive as a result. Excuse me. Her absence of fear and her genuine sweetness has a capacity to soothe, calm, and melt the troubled heart. She is a spiritual guide that works especially with those who are sensitive or needing to develop their sensitivity to perceive spiritual communication more consciously. She teaches us to manage our sensitivity constructively without having to withdraw from the world to avoid feeling overwhelmed by it. For those that are naturally very sensitive, high feeling level personalities, this can be essential learning. We need sensitivity to be open to subtle spiritual worlds and to experience them as being real. Cultivating this level of exquisite awareness becomes a sacred task of holding light in a darkened world. Then we have to learn how to manage that sensitivity so that we are able to be involved in the world that needs our subtle perceptions, our realization of the light, and our trust in it without feeling overwhelmed and having to withdraw from it altogether to cope. Lady Nada's energy supports us in learning that we can be empowered through our spiritual awareness translated into action. It can be all too easy to feel victimized, insulted, attacked, despairing, confused, frightened, or grief-stricken about the state of the world or circumstances in our lives at times. Lady Nada supports us in feeling the divine love that lies within all things, even if it is sometimes well disguised. From this place, we can stay connected to that divine presence and allow it to be the healing force that is flowing through us and transforming the world one heart at a time, starting, of course, with our own. Our world is in tumultuous transition. This is the nature of birth. If you have ever given birth or heard it happening, then you'll know it's a gutsy, raw, and wild happening. At a spiritual level, it is just as raw and wild, perhaps even more so because it is happening at an even grander scale. Many of us sense that what we most need is trust, yet fear can be easily fueled by uncertainty. Fear-based advertising and media manipulation tries and often succeeds in seducing us to believe that we need to buy certain things or appear in a particular way in order to be safe, secure, and successful. This cultivates a spiritual immaturity that is dangerously distracting, especially for those of us who are so consciously on the divine path and meant to be helping the human race find its way forward. I count you in on this because otherwise you wouldn't be reading this book or tuned in to this channel. It is so important that you and I treat our own consciousness as the precious resource of light for the greater human evolutionary process that it is. Spiritual immaturity, amplified by media-induced insecurities, makes trusting ourselves and the workings of the divine through us and our lives much more difficult. It puffs up the appeal of an ego apparently in control and makes our addiction to symbols of power, stuff, money, status, appearance of success, and beauty, and so forth, even harder to give up because there doesn't seem to be a genuine alternative available to us. Spiritual immaturity breeds blindness to subtle light. So the more we descend into trusting only what we can physically see, touch, taste, and hear, the more the utterly stunning and gorgeous light of divine love is veiled, becoming almost completely dimmed and unseen. With our inner vision, our true vision, cloaked by a love of the glittering and shiny, whether it is genuine gold or not, We are more easily seduced into lies of advertising, which can waste our precious energy. The blinding and garish false light of all that media razzle dazzle then seems so much more than it is. It's a bit like mistaking the heavenly light for the lights of Las Vegas. Dazzling they may be, but divine illumination they are not. The humans who have enough insight and heart vision to be able to consciously recognize what is going on will encounter a deep divine rage. However, this is often followed by a sense of helplessness at how to deal with a system that is so deranged and unworthy of the great spiritual light that wants to manifest through the awakened human heart. The system needs to heal, and it is being forced to do so by breaking down. But humanity needs to heal too if a new culture is going to prevail. With Lady Nada, we are supported in remaining connected to a greater truth, which gives us energy to deal with the immediate situation in the ways that we can, one step, one choice, one day at a time, without becoming so enraged at ignorance and folly that we lose our compassion. That greater truth is that divine love and presence is always there. It is the only thing that is eternal. Our job is to let it come through us, to move us into the action that is appropriate for each one of us, to surrender to it. Lady Nada helps us keep our sensitivity open so that we can feel and sense that the direction that divine love gives us and still be in the world without becoming depressed and losing our way, imagining that the problem is too big to be solved and collapsing under the weight of it all. In times when the pain of the world does seem too much, when our outrage at some injustice or another is so raw, we need the love of Lady Nada, her gentle balm and tenderness. It is not to push away the pain that we feel, but rather to support us to access the strength and reassurance we need to continue on with our work, to use that pain as a motivation to work hard and commit to our spiritual healing work, charity work, and service in whatever way we are best equipped to offer. My small piece of this puzzle, as I understand it at this time, is to help the light bearers such as yourself to strengthen yourselves, to connect with higher beings that are here to help, and to become even more empowered to do their sacred work, your part in this awakening. You may have a similar task which you carry out in a different way. I rely upon the divine light to help me complete my task, not to numb me or offer an escape into the otherworldly realm of perfection, but to inspire me to channel my heart energy and my focus into constructive channels in the here and now, where love, light, and power in service of love are so needed. Lady Nada has taught me to treasure my sensitivity and to use any pain that I feel within me in response to something happening in my life or in the greater world around me, to give me energy and motivation to do my spiritual work and personal spiritual practices. This motivation is a gift because there are times when the work of claiming divine consciousness in a human body is not only hard, but seems impossibly daunting, to put it mildly. In those moments, we might need some help in accessing great divine love. So instead, we can use any pain that we feel to remind us why we are doing all this work, tackling the obstacles to become conscious, to becoming conscious, and living it as much as we can, and even then, still reaching for more. If you are sensitive, aware, and brave enough to bear conscious witness to the pain on the planet and are motivated to heal yourself, the rest of humanity and the planet, including her animals and plants, then you are a sacred gift on this earth right now. As one of those on the path helping the human race forward in our own unique, humble, and important ways, we need to recognize the mess and find the power of our own rage, our own willingness to be completely unreasonable, stamp our feet, and become pig-headedly stubborn about doing our work with integrity and our spiritual practices with commitment, no matter what another may feel about the subject. Only then will we have enough feistiness to hear bear the sensitivity that gives us access to the pain of the world, and also to the tremendous spiritual radiance that lies hiding within the darkness. It is the guidance of Lady Nada to stay awake to our feelings, to honor our sensitivity and the divine connection that this allows us to make conscious, and then to trust unconditionally in the divine happening through us. Only then can we safeguard ourselves against becoming lost in the haze of confusion going on around us. There are those who connect with the heart and the presence therein of the divine to be able to feel trust and serenity in the unfolding dance of the divine presence on earth at this time of great rebirth and associated change and upheaval. These are the lighthouses, the light bearers that can say to their fellow human beings, I am in this mad divine dance of change too, and I am going through upheaval just like you. But I know a secret that can help. This is divine transformation. The more you trust, the more you come to know that the pain is the pain of birth, with hope and a precious gift being delivered at its end, the more inner peace you will feel. There are many more who are working for the light from a place of service that is deep in the darkness itself. They struggle at times to stay conscious of that divine connection of the light within their own heart and not become swallowed up by fear, doubt, confusion, or even just the sheer extent of ego suffering happening around them. These are the healers who need healing too. We all do at times. It's important to ask for it and give yourself permission to receive it. Then there are those who don't feel the certainty of divine connection at all, who are quite simply terrified of the upheaval and struggle that they are experiencing as their lives appear to be falling apart around them, even whilst they try everything they can think of to keep change at bay. Perhaps addiction, perhaps dissociation, perhaps blaming another, or perhaps falling into the most prevalent attempt at defense against divine happening, denial. And so there are those who deny change at all, who keep trying to do things as they always have, who are madly stepping over whomever they can to gain the next foothold on a ladder that doesn't lead anywhere, yet supposedly promises worldly success and security, or whatever else the ego in question finds most attractive. All of us are in this together. Wow. This is a beautiful message. And no matter where we tend to vibrate in this stream of consciousness, higher beings like Lady Nada can help us come more into the heart where we can be most effectively restored and then stimulated into the right actions on our various paths to live our light, which in turn helps everyone else move along the path of consciousness. As we walk the path of truth, we are regularly empowered by divine presence. Fear becomes less compelling, and divinely inspired action and continued discipline becomes more possible. We can see things through and bring our inner visions to life in the world. This is about fulfillment of our need to contribute to the world, and we can become more generous in what we want to give to the world, how we want to allow the divine to flow through us, even if that means sacrificing personal plans and preferences about how we thought we would be most happy. As we do let this happen, we open up to a joyfulness of spiritual fulfillment that we perhaps once thought would only happen if our vision unfolded exactly as we thought it should. The divine intelligence often has a far more outstanding vision held for us than we would ever dare to dream of for ourselves. As the fear leaves us, we become capable in ways that previously were unavailable to us. That is because we are more one with the divine than before, more allowing and more surrendered, and more able to sustain divine vibration. Our capacity for sensitivity and receptivity renders us more powerful over time. It allows us to act powerfully without coming from a position of dominance. The divine loves a paradox. It is often that which seems most gentle, which can be where the real action is taking place. One only has to think of the actions of Mahatma Gandhi's revolution of nonviolent civil disobedience, or Mother Teresa's life of passionate service to the poor, even when that meant she had to defy certain mandates of the religious path to which she was devoted, to get the gist of how much power can exist within a gentle heart dedicated to divine love and truth, and how this can move the ways of the world. What these wise human beings had in common, and what Lady Nada helps us realize, is that with trust in the divine and a release of fear, we become capable of moving in the world with less force and more effectiveness. We use our will in alignment with divine prompting, and things that could be impossible otherwise become accessible to us. The inner child healing work is our place to start. To clear fear and learn trust is essential for our spiritual growth to approach the levels demonstrated by beings like Mother Teresa. We have this potential within us. Our job is to create a fertile inner environment where that potential can grow and develop and eventually flower into consciousness and divinely inspired action. I remember watching a television program that unexpectedly illustrated the wisdom of Lady Nada. Oddly enough, it was a program on shark handlers. Sharks are considered by many to be a most fearsome creature, yet there are those that seek to protect these animals because they are part of the ecosystem that balances and maintains the health of the oceans. The program documented live in the field testing of a shark repellent that could be applied to fishing nets to deter sharks from getting caught and harmed in the nets. This would help fishermen secure a more abundant catch and minimize unnecessary harm to the local shark populations. To test the efficacy of the shark repellent, the shark handlers had to get close enough to touch the shark so they could spray some repellent near its nose to see how the shark would respond. Initially, to avoid the danger of being attacked as they got close to the animals, the handlers were practicing a technique of inducing the shark into a natural catatonic response. This is an altered state, not unlike what a human would experience through fainting, where the shark is healthy and alive but semi-conscious. In such a state, the shark is able to react to the repellent, proving that the repellent works without being able to attack the handler, making the test procedure safer. The problem was how best to get the shark into that trance-like state. A group of shark handlers were working with a scientific approach. By having a group of men around a smaller shark, they could each tie a fin and together flip the shark over onto its back. In this unnatural position, the shark's nervous system slows down as a reaction against the shift in gravity, which would normally support its internal functioning. It then temporarily enters a catatonic or stupefied. This procedure works for sharks that can be physically flipped by human beings. The inability of human beings to physically flip larger sharks on their backs meant a new method of testing was needed. This led the group to meet a shark handler who worked with large reef sharks. Instead of inducing them into catatonic response, this handler's approach was an invitation to the animal to connect. She would calm herself into a meditative state where she was free from fear of the sharks. Diving deep, she would descend into the shark's environment, focusing on feeling centered, calm, and present. This allowed her brain waves to slow down. It was a form of active meditation, consciously entering into a peaceful, altered state. She then released a small, appetizing meal of sardines around her, which attracted the reef sharks toward her. Throughout the years, she had developed her technique of presence and connection. She had it so refined that she knew how the sharks would respond to her energy. She noted that if she was nervous, they would become aggressive and test her with physical pushing and other aggressive behavior. Yet when she was calm, the sharks became calm too, and astonishingly enough, eventually they would start nuzzling close to her belly, nudging each other out of the way so that she could stroke their noses, which was very soothing to the shark and would eventually send it to a tonic trance. This gently induced trance, willingly entered into by the sharks, was not as deep as the reactive catatonic state that scientists thought they needed to be able to get close to these animals. It turns out that the more aggressive physical disabling wasn't necessary at all. A voluntary relaxed state evoked from a place of calm would render these fearsome creatures docile enough even for the woman to be able to remove fishing hooks that had got lodged in the shark's mouths. There was no need to attempt to aggressively induce a deep catatonic state because the sharks actively sought the more peaceful experience with this capable handler. Throughout the process, other sharks in the group would nudge each other away from the woman so that they could have their noses stroked too, until eventually the woman was surrounded by blissed out sharks seeking her loving attention. To watch this on film was utterly breathtaking. The female handler taught these scientists that they could commune with the sharks through an invitation rather than to to overpower them through aggressive, though well-intentioned interference. The lesson the scientists learned from this handler is one of the same lessons that Lady Nada seeks to teach us. We can achieve more through power that comes from wisdom than in head-to-head confrontation. My grandmother captured the same principle with her oft-used expression, "You get more flies with honey than vinegar." I had a far more mundane experience of this recently with my cat, whom I adopted from the local cat protection society some years ago. After several years of apartment living, we finally moved into a house and a garden where he could climb trees and have feline standoffs with the local cat population, who all seemed inexplicably drawn to try and claim our home as their territory, thus prompting me to call our home the Greenwich chapter of the Temple of Bast, after the cat-headed Egyptian goddess. My cat was in feline heaven. Unfortunately, so were the rampant fleas that thrived in the garden and on the other local cats. I often laughed ironically at TV commercials where the cat calmly sits as the owner applies some anti-flea liquid or other to the back of the cat's neck. The cat, peaceful and somehow grateful for the owner's intervention for its well-being. The scene in my house was somewhat different. Leo, my cat, would rise up with the fury of hell, urging him on as though he had been scorched by devil fire whenever I attempted to gently squeeze the smelly anti-flea liquid on the scruff of his neck, no matter how much soothing and patting I could summon up before snatching my hands away from his vicious swiping claws. I endured this for a while, but then the liquid didn't seem to work anymore anyway. After trying a recommended essential oil blend to counteract fleas on him in a bath, an experience that neither he nor I wish to ever repeat, I consulted the local vet for some further suggestions. He recommended a tablet to arrest the persistent flea problem. The other problem, however, was getting the tablet into the cat. After some thwarted attempts, my partner and I eventually developed a technique whereby one of us would hold his legs in place while the other would quickly put the tablet in Leo's mouth and stroke his nose to make him swallow it. It was somewhat bloody. Leo may look like Garfield, large, fluffy, and orange, but he can move like a ninja when so inclined. Nonetheless, this approach got the end result accomplished. We came to dread the monthly flea treatments, possibly even more than the cat. Then one day, Leo was sitting on my desk as I was writing on my laptop. He was in a zen, peaceful state, probably hypnotized by the repetitive sound of keys being struck, or more likely just because he felt like chilling out in that moment. I quietly asked my partner if he would bring the anti-flea tablet so we could try to administer it whilst the cat was so peaceful. With a somewhat resigned expression, my partner brought the tablet over, then paused, put it on his fingers, and held it under the cat's nose. Under our truly astonished gazes, Leo promptly ate it. The following month, with a mixture of hope and trepidation, I attempted to reenact this wondrous miracle. The tablet accidentally slipped from my fingers onto the carpet. Leo promptly ate it and then proceeded to go and eat some cat biscuits from his bowl before laying down for a snooze. Silly as this example may seem, unless you are a cat owner, in which case you'll probably have been there yourself, I couldn't help but feel that somehow Lady Nada had descended in through the crown chakra of my partner, prompting him to invite rather than demand that the cat eat the tablet. What was most astonishing to me was not so much that Leo ate the tablet, because now that I think about it, he'll try to eat the most random things sometimes. but that I had managed to make something that ended up so easy into something so challenging for so long, simply because I thought that it had to be that way. This is another example of Lady Nada's wisdom, that loving grace can be more effective in creating a desired outcome than trying to force it to be a certain way. One of the first lessons that I learned in working with the masters, and Lady Nada in particular, was that approaching force with force was not necessary or even particularly productive. Far from being weak, to be present without judgment allows for new consciousness to emerge and real change to occur, rather than a destructive battle of wills where someone has to win and another must lose. In such cases, there is no real winner at all. The presence of Lady Nada can dissolve so much hatred, anger, and aggression, not for pummeling it or zapping it with divine vengeance, but with a gentle pervasiveness of love. She can help us to learn a way other than reacting to anger or fear with more anger and fear. She can help us remain present and centered in the heart, to remain aware even in the face of another's rage and make spiritually intelligent choices about how we wish to respond. Sometimes we won't respond at all, except in the sense of feeling compassion for that person's suffering. Our lack of reactivity might help destabilize the painful patterns running wild in that person's psyche, slowing the momentum of that which is causing them pain. The person may challenge us as being selfish or uncaring because we are not responding in the way that their ego wishes we would, so that the drama or story would continue. But with gentleness in our heart, we can be strong, present, and accept the person's right to be in the drama without having to jump into it with them. Even her name, Nada, which can translate as nothing, can remind us that so much of our fight is just hot air and requires nothing to heal it, because it is not actually as real as we think it is at the time. She is the embodiment of the ultimate paradox of love, that it is the kindest, gentlest force in our universe and the most powerful. Nada is associated with the color of golden pink and with two special symbols. The first being a cross with a heart representing the spiritual love and Christ consciousness manifest on the earth. Her second symbol is the pink rose of compassion and grace. This rose represents Nada's compassion, especially for those that appeal to her for help in healing patterns of karmic-based behavior that no longer serve soul development. She will often work with Serapis Bey to help heal such patterns. Along with Serapis Bey, Lady Nada is a member of the Karmic Board, a group of guides and angels that assist us in understanding our soul lessons for this lifetime and from other lifetimes. It is helpful to know that we can appeal to the Karmic Board through prayer, asking for assistance and grace in sorting through lessons in which we may be struggling. Lady Nada is particularly helpful for those of us seeking to accelerate karmic clearing, really outgrowing our old issues and shifting into a more gentle way of being in the world, a way of divine grace. This doesn't mean we become floppy and without a backbone. When we need to act in the world and healers are called to really engage with the world, not shy away from it, then her gentleness helps us stay connected to our hearts. To act, even with great fire and passion, from a place of love, gentleness, and devotion, is going to give you spiritual stamina and boldness, especially when compared to acting from a place of fear. To act from a place of love, even if you are acting in sacred rage against an injustice, fired up to take practical steps to make change in the world, attracts all manner of divine support to your cause. This is especially relevant when we are in a challenging phase in our lives, perhaps even through spiritual crisis, where the qualities of endurance, trust, and faith in the higher workings of the universe are required, because we cannot sense the divine purpose or meaning behind what appears to be happening to us at the time. During such times, we can be more vulnerable to those that, with good intention or not, believe that they hold our answers for us and perhaps want us to follow the path that they think we should follow. Lady Nada is particularly helpful for those who would tend to look outside of themselves for meaning, direction, and purpose, rather than seeking answers within, trusting that their own divinity is enough and its timing is perfection. She encourages devotion to the soul and the ability to find and trust in one's own path. Then she talks about that she has a CD that's available that has meditation that can be helpful for healing the heart center and the inner child, balancing energies and invoking feelings of bliss and nurturing. Okay, last section. Rhodochrosite is a colored with various shades of pink, usually more of a candy pink than rose pink. It features white bands swirling into patterns. Often available as a tumbled stone, it is also commonly used in jewelry, which is a wonderful way to work with this stone when you are going through a healing process. Just remember to cleanse your stone regularly. There's information in the introduction about how and when to do this. This stone is a bestower of peace, heart healing, and emotional release. It helps us remain positive without shutting off from negative feelings through denial, and even helps us access feelings that have been stored unconsciously in the body, manifesting as physical symptoms. It helps us to unearth them, to become more conscious of the emotion that was hidden in the symptom, to become more able to express it and therefore release it. You must trust your emotional process when working with this stone, as there will be times when you may well be surprised at what arises in both positive and more challenging ways. Often when there is a challenging emotion arising, then there is something extremely valuable that has been repressed underneath it, and it wants to come to light. That may be a beautiful singing voice, the ability to have a healthy, fit body, some fierce fashion sense, or strong natural psychic or healing ability, for example. It might be your inner power and clear sense of your truth. It might be spiritual leadership ability. It might be a talent for a form of art or music. You may have no conscious clue that this ability was within you until you release the emotion and its surrounding story of pain and suffering, honoring it, and then letting it go. Then all of a sudden you find yourself writing poetry and singing, or filled with energy and joining a group that does healing inner dance or wild group drumming. Once shy, you may find a more extroverted side and become more social. If more extroverted naturally, you may find a deepening of your inner world as your connection to inner guidance becomes stronger or more rich, visual, and lush without old pain obscuring the inner vision. The possibilities are endless. Rhodochrosite also encourages natural and free emotional expression, which can be very exhilarating and different if you have lived a life where you had to control or repress certain emotions in order to feel accepted. That would include many of us. Your loved ones might not know quite how to respond to the new and more expressive you at first. Rhodochrosite will help you stay present and confident through any such changes or challenges, remaining true to yourself and not falling into the trap that you should go back to how you were to make others more comfortable, which doesn't serve your growth or theirs. This stone helps heal the emotions and the emotional centers in the body, especially the solar plexus chakra and issues around eating, shame, and self-worth, and the heart and issues of feeling blocked, stuck, or drained, physical effects of asthma, or depletion of the lung energy through constant analysis and overthinking as a response to anxiety or fear of not being in control. If you have a dislike of this stone, which can arise as a revulsion or a sense that you really don't need it, or any other quite negative reaction, despite its pretty and harmless appearance, then you can be sure that it is already working with you to dislodge something that your mind is resisting in an effort to avoid the pain. Congratulate yourself on being so instinctively intuitive and give yourself permission to stay with the process and not run from it. I have a saying when it comes to releasing emotional toxins: better out than in. So whilst it isn't fun to release the pain because you feel it on the way out, you'll feel so much better for it once it's out of your system and no longer affecting you. If you can relate to this experience with rhodochrosite, don't give up. Perhaps work with Saint Germain and amethyst in chapter 9, or Serapis Bay and clear calcite in chapter 1, and then come back to this chapter and complete the healing process if you feel you cannot continue with rhodochrosite at this moment. Despite its gentle nature, it is a powerful healer, and the healing can be painful for a time. Rhodochrosite helps restore an ability to play, to be creative, sexually comfortable, and energetically more at home with your body. You will feel more at peace with yourself, clearer, and also more emotionally aware of your talents and your darker side too. You'll have a sense that you can accept yourself more fully without having to be perfect, which can be the greatest gift of peace to a soul who encountered a troubled childhood and once believed that they had to somehow be different, better, or more worthy before deserving love and acceptance. Okay, so the last part of this is the healing with Lady Nada and Rhodochrosite. You'll definitely want to check out this book or the other resources that Alana has. That was quite a lot of direct information. And of course, I was experiencing it very viscerally because in this now moment, we could absolutely say that a lot of the things that she talked about are part of our collective experience as we shift. So I'm going to close it up for here for this particular reading, and I'm sure that I will come back again shortly with more guidance. Definitely a deep dive with rhodochrosite, and thank you to Soul Whisperer, Althea, Nikki, Divine Love Crystal Grid, my friend Judy, Justin Assar for his Liquid Crystal Oracle, Alana Fairchild for her Crystal Masters, and for Rhodochrosite, which I don't own one, but I expect that I will be purchasing one or bringing one home, adopting it, if you will, very soon. So to each of you, thank you for tuning in with me today, and I wish you the compassionate love and presence of Lady Nada, beautiful energy. Namaste.